and welcome back to the Scenario 7 podcast. My name is Sam, and this week I'm joined by Joe Roberts. It's 2 episodes in a row that we've been without Josh. This week, he has an excuse. He is ill, and we do send our best wishes to him. But Joe, it's great to have you back. How have you been?
I've been good. I've been good. Josh has abandoned us again with illness.
Yeah, it is a shame, but as they say, the show goes on. Unfortunately, we couldn't put out a preview for this race last week due to Joe. You just had your COVID jab, so basically fell asleep. And we had Josh, who was ill. He's been ill for quite a few days now, so that wasn't ideal. But don't worry, we're doing a review, and we should get back on track with previews and reviews for every race now. But yeah, let's get stuck in with this really interesting Grand Prix. Austria last week was Styrian. This week's Austria, same track, but different names. What were your general thoughts on the race this week?
More interesting. I think everybody can agree on that. I think having Norris there, I think, made it interesting. But I would have liked it to being a bit closer between the Mercedes and Red Bull, because I think that battle, I think, is going to be very, very exciting.
Yeah,
but
last week was all right. It's better than you say it is, but
yeah,
this week I agree was certainly more interesting. There was lots of things happened this race. We actually had talking points to talk about. So, for example, first of all, Esteban Ocon had nightmare in quali for the second week in a row in Austria, and he's trying to make his way out the midfield on lap 2, and he gets completely sandwiched between Schumacher and Giovinazzi. Giovinazzi hit him. His suspension failed, causing a DNF and a safety car, which basically bunched everyone up again. I mean, they were pretty bunched up because it was the start of the race, but bunched people up, and it caused an incident on the restart with everyone being so close. We had the first incident, which caused a lot of controversy. There's a few that did, but the first one where they just restarted, and it was turn 4, which was where most of the drama this week happened, where Perez tried to go around the outside of Norris after safety car, but ends up in the gravel with Norris subsequently getting a 5-second penalty. Joe, was this 5 seconds worth? What was your view on the incident?
I know we both have different views on it, but I because I've watched so many races around that track, and also you've raced on it in the games, so you can kind of get a sense of where, like on the F1 games, you kind of get a sense of where, yes, there's some justification for the 5 seconds, but also not, because of the way the corner is. You drop down, and it's very hard for you because of the way that Norris went in. The entry goes down the hill and then has to go up. So it's obviously, you basically, if he it goes, it was on the Sky pad I was watching, it was like, if they got a different trajectory, yes, he could have left space, but he would have lost the position. So you're basically kind of saying, yeah, but you're gonna saying, Norris, you have to give it up. But from my point of view, Perez wasn't ahead enough, or even ahead to make the move, and should have backed out because of the nature of Wade Norris, because of the tires losing grip around that corner, the car generally just pushing out wide, would have just pushed him off anyway, even with because of the way that they both went into that corner. The one that should have backed out was Perez, which is very different to the one that happened later on in the race.
Yeah, sure. I at first, I went like, as I'm repping the merch there, Sergio Perez, and as you know, massive Sergio Perez fan. At first, I was like, got to be a penalty. He's pushed my guy off the track. However, having reflected on it and having reflected on having mulled over all the incidents over this race, I think it was a racing incident. I think if you're giving 5-second penalties for that, and I'm also going to bring up the Leclerc one where Perez was defending, did the same thing as Norris. Leclerc just a bit more ahead, but still the same incident, ended up in the gravel where Perez got 5 seconds. And I think if you're giving 5 seconds for that, you're not encouraging racing. F1, we want to see overtakes. We want to see drivers pushing their cars to the limits. We want to see them trying to use every inch of the track to try and get past. And once you start giving 5-second penalties for that, it's really like cars are going to stop doing that. Races are not going to be as interesting from a overtaking standpoint. And it's just frustrating. Do you think the Leclerc going around Perez was any different? Surely it's exactly the same.
I know, no, because of the fact that there's a difference because the car. I don't know. Actually, no. Ricardo was. I personally thought that more was a penalty because Leclerc was more of a head and Perez hit him twice. So for me, that was a penalty because it was completely forcing somebody off the track. With going back to the Norris one, because of it was a restart, the tires wouldn't be up to temperature on the right window going around that corner. Maybe the dirty air from Verstappen's like swash some of the downforce off the car, so it was always going to go to that side. So that's the difference. And then Perez should have backed out. Because that's when Leclerc. That's why Leclerc didn't spin on the gravel, is because he backed out just a lot more earlier than Perez did, and so. Yeah, it's for me that one's more of a penalty because Leclerc was more of a head, and then Perez kind of bashed him a bit more, and probably should have just slightly lifted the throttle and then gone again, because Perez has got a faster car than Leclerc anyway, so he could have just try to follow him and then go at him again. So. Yeah, I think it was just a misjudgment from Perez. It wasn't particularly his finest race today because he's annoyed a lot of drivers. But I think that one was more of a penalty for me than. But I do agree with that. You said that if you give him penalties for like that, that's like. As in, I'm saying the Norris one was like minimal. As in, it's very touch and go penalty because it's wheel to wheel and somebody should have backed out. But if you're giving that a penalty, the Leclerc one was more of a penalty, which then you then give has to be consistent. And obviously, you said that we want racing, and if we don't get that wheel-to-wheel action, I think that it could easily impact the thrill of the sport.
Yeah, no, I still personally think that both of them were racing incidents, but I certainly get what you're coming from. To talk about the point where you said that the Norris one was different because both their tires were up to temp. To be fair, Perez said after the race, he came out and said his tires were really graining and he was struggling a bit with that. He also got damage from the Norris incident from going over the gravel, so he was struggling with that. He then had another incident with Leclerc, lap 47, where Leclerc tried to go around the outside just after turn 7, and but ended up in the gravel as well, where Perez got another 5-second penalty, putting his Perez up to 10. And I think this is the most likely of the penalty of them all. I think this one it's unfortunate because Perez does get oversteer, so he does have to try and combat that oversteer. But unfortunately, it was more of a penalty than the other two. The one where he got Norris a penalty, and then the one where he got the penalty for his move on Leclerc. And I did feel sorry for Leclerc because everything just kind of Perez did just kind of compromise his race, and Norris and Leclerc were very angry after the race. But to be fair to Perez, he did come out and really apologize to Leclerc in his interview after the race, and was saying that he never wants to compromise the race of another driver. That's not his driving style. It just kind of went wrong with him today. It was an interesting point as we were talking about these incidents brought up earlier. Christian Horner said, like on the commentary, they talked to him about the Norris incident and basically just said it was a racing incident, and then the FIA gave a 5-second penalty. But he said after the race, he said in like I've kind of put it. These aren't his direct quote, but I've kind of summed it up. He was like, "It's racing. None of them should have been penalties. But the stewards basically put themselves in a position where they went after they gave one, they had to give them all." I just wanted to know what you thought about that.
I completely agree. Is again the Leclerc one was more the second Leclerc incident between Perez was more of like that Perez shouldn't just been in the throttle when on that sort of corner, because again it's a corner that pushes you out wide. So I don't that one's more of a penalty. But again, I know where Christian Horner is coming from, is that you have to. It's like it's a bit different to you can't really say it to like football, but if you're giving out, don't know, like soft tackles, you kind of have to, and for yellow cards you kind of have to keep it consistent. So I kind of it's very much you kind of have to do that. I think the stewards kind of were put themselves in that position in the first place, as Christian Horner said. So
I completely agree. And to be honest, I prefer the FIA to be consistent. And after, admittedly, they made a mistake with Norris. I don't. They probably won't admit that, but I think they did. But I'm glad they kept it consistent, giving 5 seconds for these incidents rather than giving Norris 5 seconds, then look at these Perez incidents and not giving him anything. So I'd prefer them to be consistent than just be really extra harsh on whoever did it first. I'd like to mention George Russell and Fernando Alonso just quickly, because we had a really great battle for 10th, and there was a lot of it was such a great battle. We had Russell City at 10th and Alonso just lap after lap trying to get that place. He did in the end, but there was a lot of Russell defending that got praised, and he defended really well. However, a lot of that defending was what Norris and was what Perez got penalised for. It's just Alonso saw that he couldn't make it around the outside and pulled out in turn 4. So I thought it was Alonso showed his experience there, definitely, to not make a move down the outside of that corner where it's really hard with the racing line. And I just wanted to what would you make of the Alonso and Russell battle? It was so heartbreaking to not see Russell get a point.
Yeah, it was kind of, as an I've started liking Alonso, considering I didn't particularly like him for like 10 years because he was annoying at McLaren the first time round, and then obviously Ferrari, and then went back to McLaren. I started actually liking him. So I got quite a respect to Alonso in a way that he's got the ability and probably got the wisdom as well, as you said, to know that you shouldn't be going around the outside of that corner unless you're very much ahead. And then basically prove to Perez and Leclerc how you should be doing it. But again, George Russell's defending it's getting to a point where it's in two weeks of Silverstone, I think.
Yeah, 2 weeks.
How many rounds have gone?
Oh, I'm not sure. A lot.
I think it's like 10 probably.
Yeah. We're not even halfway through, I don't think.
Yeah, I think it's getting to a point where Mercedes could easily they don't want to. The thing is that the Mercedes don't really want to pull the trigger too early because it might disrupt the championship battle. But I think Russell is very much ahead in that pecking order of the second Mercedes seat, and that defending from a very, very good driver in Alonso shows why he is so highly rated, because the fact that the Williams is a slower car than the Alpine, and he kept him for like 7 laps or even like at 12.
Quite a few.
Yeah, it was brilliant defending. But the relationship between Russell and Alonso is quite funny at the moment. Yeah, because I remember it was his interview that he said he saw Russell P10. I was like, no.
Yeah, he said in his interview, I want it to be anyone but him.
Yeah, so I think I think when he retires, or they might, I don't know, you don't really know what's going on in the paddock. Alonso might be feeding stuff to Russell in order to improve, because they have, I don't know, have such good relationship. So it's one to watch. I think the relationship between Russell and Alonso, because I think when you get Alonso saying he's very good, I think that's when people and Mercedes need to look at him and try and get him in the best car possible, because he can win world championships as well.
Yeah, I completely agree. What I love about this grid is that so many of the experienced drivers are getting along really well with the young guys, and they're acting kind of like mentors. Because, for example, we talked about there, Alonso and Russell having a good relationship, and Alonso being like, I really didn't want to take the position, but had to. And then you had during the race as well, when Lewis Hamilton was trying to defend from Norris, he was saying, he literally just came out and said on his radio, Lando's such a great driver, like giving him a massive praise. And you also have Mick Schumacher, who's Sebastian Vettel is pretty much treating like his son. Like, it's ridiculous, like the amount of experienced drivers that are just taking these young guns under their wing. And I think that's really positive to see, because I personally can't think of any. Let me know if you can, but there's no real like toxic relationships on this grid between people. Everyone seems to get along quite well.
I would say Schumacher Mazepin. I think Haas have hidden that very well, but there is something brewing at Haas, because when I've heard like Gunter Steiner talk about it and previous races, they literally say, I think they literally say, you stay behind the other, and then we just want to get through the season. I think they're literally like that, because when they do race, it looks like they're going to crash.
No, I completely agree. Fair enough, maybe between those two, but other than that, I mean, even we remember that Hamilton didn't have the best relationship with Rosberg, who's one of his title rivals. But even Hamilton and Verstappen, I think, have a lot of respect for each other. They do praise each other quite a lot in the media, and they'll happily have a chat. So even like those two title rivals are civil. So I think I really like this grid in that aspect.
Yeah. I was going to say it's a very much different grid if you take like 10 years ago. You got like Alonso, who didn't particularly I don't think he really liked Hamilton even then, back at the time. But yeah, it's it's probably the most like civil grid for a very, very long time. As there's always, I think, from like as usually there's something brewing at one team that's suddenly saying bang, it explodes, and it explodes out into the media and obviously on track, like Hamilton Rosberg. But yeah, it's amazing how much respect that Verstappen showing Hamilton, which again does show how he has the potential of being a stature of Hamilton, I think, in terms of this sport, because he can probably go for another 10 years. A lot of these guys that are coming up could probably do this for another 10 years, like Norris, Russell, Leclerc, even maybe Sainz, I think. Who else? Like if Sonoda stays in the sport, there's a lot of it. It's the most talented grid I've seen for a very long period of time.
Yeah, there is certainly a lot of talent. And I think that respect from Verstappen, as you mentioned, showed how much he's matured, because like when he first came on the grid, I thought he was quite disliked because he was arrogant. His driving style was reckless, but I think his driving style and his personality has really matured. Let's talk about the incident. I mean, the last lap, the Sky cameras were panned. Crofty was talking about, oh, when Verstappen crosses the line and wins. And then you see in the top left corner, yellow flag set to 2. And I'm just sitting there just like, I don't care. We knew he was going to win. Just switch over to the yellow flag, because you just saw 2 cars dropping down the order. And it turned out that Kimi Räikkönen and Sebastian Vettel, ex-teammates, were both in the gravel. And this was very much Kimi's fault. I mean, he got a 20-second penalty after the race, which shows, I mean, maybe like a 5-second penalty can go either way. A 10-second penalty, the stewards could sometimes not deservedly give them to, but a 20-second penalty, it was very clear that Kimi turned into Vettel fighting over P12 again at turn 4. I'm guessing you agree that with the steward's opinion.
Yeah, I think this is pretty much a very simple one, Sam. I agree with you. I didn't really care about Verstappen winning because it was basically confirmed from lap 1, I think, or even when lap 3, when you could see the gap building. So I didn't really care about Verstappen winning. But yeah, it was. I don't know what Raikkonen was doing. It was like he didn't look right, saw nothing, suddenly turned. But yeah, it's a simple slam dunk, 20-second. It could even be 30. It was kind of that bad, and luckily they both didn't crash. And yeah, lucky it wasn't like the barrier wasn't even closer, because that could have been a very hefty accident. But yeah,
That
it was
was really unnecessary, wasn't it?
yeah, definitely fully deserved.
Yeah. No, it was fully deserved, completely unnecessary. But this incident also called 8 drivers to be called to the stewards after the race. We had Perez, Sainz, Leclerc, Ricciardo, Gasly, Latifi, Mazepin, and Giovinazzi all called to the stewards, and were under investigation for going too fast and the double waved yellows. And most of them got away scotch-free. 6 of them did, but Latifi and Mazepin were guilty of doing this. They both got 30-second penalties, which is massive. I mean, admittedly, they were nowhere near points in this race, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, Mazepin came 19th, which he would have come last if Ocon didn't DNF, so it doesn't really matter to him. And Latifi came 15th, which is actually not bad for him, but again, it doesn't really affect on him. The FIA were just like, here's the penalty, here's the penalty. I mean, it almost as if they just gave one and were like, oh, I really like that, I just want to do it again, and then all of a sudden got addicted to just giving out penalties. I mean, it was quite ridiculous. I mean, I personally haven't seen the Latifi and Mazepin footage and what actually happened, but 30 seconds is a long time.
Yeah, they probably just went flat.
Yeah, yeah, you're probably right. Through a double wave yellows is pretty stupid. But yeah, it's Latifi and Mazepin. I mean, I'm not going to say anymore. Let's move on to breaking down how each team did. Let's start off with Mercedes and Red Bull. And despite Verstappen winning very comfortably, the points were close this week due to Perez's misfortune. We had starting with Mercedes, we had Hamilton starting fourth. He got damage, which was pretty unfortunate. Could have probably come second if he didn't get that damage, but finished fourth. So not the best race for him, especially bear in mind he's trying to catch Verstappen. This did his chances. Not the world are good. And then you had Bottas, who started fifth and finished second in a very promising race. And then compared to Red Bull, we had Verstappen first to first, comfortable, fastest lap, and Perez starting third, having a nightmare race, but despite getting 10-second penalties, did manage to get sixth. I mean, how do you compare the fortune of Mercedes and Red Bull this weekend?
Yeah, it's again. I think when people kind of compare Perez to Albon and then even to Gasly, I think it's very. I think it's very much their misfortunes were basically just due to qualifying, just due to the nature of the car. I think Perez, his job, I think personally, is not to do stupid things. And then he can easily be P4 and base P4 and pushing the Mercedes or backing up Verstappen. I think for me, that's what I kind of see himself on that he should do in order to win so Red Bull could win both the championships. If he keeps on doing risky moves, it kind of puts, because Mercedes, I think Mercedes will get their act together. So and start winning races again and go on a bit of a streak. So I don't know. I think Perez for me needs to just not take risks, because then he'll get into then maybe doesn't get podiums until the end of the season, but at least they got points that give them the chance of winning the championship. And then Max is just, again, it's just a superstar at the moment and very much higher rated by most people. I think he's going to have a very, very good chance of winning the championship if he wins the next two races. And have you done Mercedes yet? Or do you want me to talk about Mercedes?
Talk about Mercedes, yeah, mate.
Yeah, Mercedes, again, is just unlucky for the floor damage in the rear. Again, the airflow usually compromises the performance, because today Mercedes had one car that was a very big yellow thorn in the side of them, so they couldn't just say stay put 2 and 3, which I can understand because Bottas is nowhere in the championship at the moment. I think he's like 90 points behind, which is never gonna be overhauled. So yeah, and then Bottas is just, yeah, it's just he's generally quite good around the Red Bull ring. So yeah, it's a good. I think it was a good day for him and very positive, just due to the fact of his woes in the last, I think, 5 or 6 races.
Yeah, and with new parts coming to Mercedes for Silverstone, I really do hope that will close the gap for between Mercedes and Red Bull. Do you think that? I think the gap was
It's
one
2/10. It was 2/10. I think it was two. I think it was either 2/10 or 4/10. Mercedes was saying. But what do you know? What upgrades they're bringing?
They were very. Bottas got asked about it, and Toto Wolff got asked about it. but they were very tight-lipped. But all Toto Wolff said is it should be a lot closer. So I feel like whatever they're doing, it should be hopefully going to put them in a good battle with Red Bull, especially in a race like Silverstone where they're normally quite successful.
Yeah, it sounds like I'm hoping, because I'm obviously going to the British Grand Prix, that Hamilton or even Norris can do well. But yeah, I'm the sounds of that. It sounds like there's going to be an engine upgrade, a massive engine upgrade, and a chassis upgrade as well, which they have been talking about in the media, like a couple of races back. So I'm hoping that the gap is closed, because I don't know, I can't remember. I think it's like 40. Yeah, so it's a 40, no, 20, 24 point gap. No, 44 point gap, and then obviously I think it's like the 33 or something point gap in the drivers. So I'm hoping the gap gets closer, so then we can actually have a very close championship, which we haven't seen for a very long period of time. And I don't really want it to again be kind of a one-way city of a car and a team.
Yeah, no, I completely agree. I do hope those parts do make a difference and it gets closer. Let's talk about McLaren and Ferrari. Both of these teams had interesting races. We had Norris, who had a brilliant race, finished third, but feels like he could have come second without without Perez. And then in the other garage we're talking about, Ferrari, Leclerc finished eighth after starting 12th, but feels like he could have done better without Perez. So both of these teams had a driver compromised by Sergio Perez, which one of two of the three incidents were racing incidents, in my opinion. But hey ho, and then you had Ricciardo, despite started 13th, finishing 7th, which was a great recovery. He just needs to work on his quali, and then Sainz from 10th to 5th. He's making that Ferrari seat look his own. I mean, he's making it look like they made the right decision. We talked about this last week. He is definitely providing great competition for Leclerc. How do you compare the fortunes of McLaren and Ferrari this week?
I think you've said it there. I think I'll just add on it that if Ricciardo gets a good qualifying, he can push Lando Norris, because his lap times are probably slightly slower. So you can, even if Mercedes don't get quicker, they could be in that battle for podiums. But today Norris was just, again, it kind of, if you're getting praises from Lewis Hamilton, it kind of, McLaren have got a talent there. And it looks, you can't really say, oh, he'd be a future world champion, because there's a lot of things riding on that. It's McLaren getting back to the top, and basically him being in the right place at the right time with the right teammate. And then Ricciardo was just really good today. Then you had Sainz. I agree on you in this one, because in pre-season, I remember Martin Brundle saying that could Sainz just be used as just a short-term fix, and then bring Mick Schumacher or Giovinazzi or to those kind of in the Ferrari driver academy, so then they can be brought up and be just put into that Ferrari seat, kick Sainz out. But it looks like Sainz is I would say outperforming Leclerc at the moment, and a very good teammate. And yeah, I think Charles Leclerc, his race, yeah, I agree, his race was ruined by Perez, but again, it's racing. I think of what we have to say by it. It's just racing, and that thing, those things can happen. And yeah, you can't. I think that when they look back on it, they just think there's a lot of ifs in sport, then yeah, there's a lot of ifs in sport. Why just reflect on it in that way?
Yeah, that's a good reflection. Let's move on to the midfield battle between AlphaTauri, Aston Martin, and Alpine. I'll start talking about AlphaTauri. Gasly starting sixth, really good quality. His quality is just consistently great now, and coming ninth, getting 2 good points for AlphaTauri, with Sonoda finishing 12th, missing out on points. We had in the Aston Martin, we had Vettel, who got wiped out, finishing 17th. Very unlucky at the end, but he wasn't on for points anyway. And Stroll, who had a disappointing race. And in the Alpine, you had George Russell's best friend, Fernando Alonso, getting a point, and Ocon DNFing. It's not really much to say about the midfield battle this week, is there? Apart from a really good drive from Alonso that could have been a lot more.
Yeah, there was, I would just say, decent from all the drivers. Maybe Aston Martin could have done a lot better in their car. But apart from that, I think, as you just said it's not really much to talk about them, because AlphaTauri just did their own race. I think Gasly did very well, and then Alonso, as you said, stole a point from his best friend. So I think, yeah, there's not really much to talk about. If Ocon maybe finished, I think then you could kind of put Alpine in that bracket of not performing very well. But in general, I think that was the best they could do.
Yeah, I agree. Now let's talk about the team that we talk about on their own, because no one's in the same league as them, basically, because they're not good enough for the relegation. Or it's not even relegation. They're better than the bottom two, and they're not good enough for the midfield. Alfa Romeo, Kimi Raikkonen, 22nd penalty, Giovinazzi, 14th, and ended Ocon's race, not to the fault of his own. But how would you describe Alfa Romeo's weekend? I mean, again, is there really much to say about it?
I don't even know if Giovinazzi was in the race, to be honest. But then Kimi, I think, did very well to push. Was it Russell? Yeah, it was Russell, and then obviously the incident happened with Vettel. So you could argue that they did have a good weekend, but then until that corner where it crashed. So I think it was overall a very, very just usual weekend for them, just being very behind below the row, below the mid pack, and not really doing much.
Yeah. Now let's talk about the bottom two, and the only way to really describe it is there's one incredible driver, and the rest are pretty naff. I mean, you had in the Williams, first of all, George Russell qualifying 8th in that car, which is just incredible. Technically qualifying 9th, but then with the Vettel penalty. And then you had in finishing 11th in the race, really unlucky not to get his first point in F1. Wonder if that point will ever come in a Williams, or whether he'll get moved to Mercedes before he gets it. And then on the other side, the garage of Latifi, who ended up with a 30-second penalty. Mazepin came last, also got a 30-second penalty. And Schumacher came just in front of Mazepin. So, yeah, pretty rubbish, but Russell's incredible.
Yeah, I think you could trying to think what driver you can compare it to in years gone past. I think you could Alonso. I think that's the best kind of comparison you can give him. Like McLaren. I don't know if you watched F1 back then when McLaren and Alonso. Oh my word, Alonso could get the absolute maximum out of that car, and it does look like Russell is getting every inch of speed, downforce, braking and all that sort of stuff. I think he's getting absolutely everything out of it. And obviously the track is very simple, not very simple, but just got three straights. So it's not much turning. So it suits the William package very much. But again, as you say, for the other three drivers, but I wouldn't say Schumacher because he's a very slow burner. You can suddenly get really quick if he gets a decent car. But Latifi and Mazepin are the ones that are now, I think, are going on the chopping block at the moment for the well, would you say summer market? I don't know. Sounds a bit too much football, but
Yeah, they got on the transfer list.
yeah. as in they could easily, you could easily see some rookies from F2 coming up and replacing one of them. I think because Latifi, I think, is only there at the moment because he brings the money.
Those Mazepin.
Well, yeah, but the problem with Mazepin is rumors his dad might buy it, so that's why I say one of them. I think two of them should go, all of them. I think that should, but yeah, it's not really much to say about Haas. It's just, no, Schumacher was 40 seconds off Latifi, and then Mazepin was another 40 seconds off Michael Schumacher. So same old Haas, same old F2 car, and that's it.
Yeah, I'll correct you then. Mick Schumacher, not Michael. He isn't.
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, Mick. Yeah, I swear is his name. I swear his like proper name is because is it? I don't know.
I have no idea, but yeah, I think the thing is, I'm actually growing to like Mazepin. I mean, not his driving, but I think his personality is actually shining through. Admittedly, he had an incident which was like really not nice and sparked a lot of controversy, but I think he actually comes across as a nice guy, and that was a mistake. And Latifi's also a really nice guy, and the videos with him and Russell are really funny because they just get on really well. So, not two drivers that I want to go, but if they weren't bringing in so much money to the teams, they wouldn't be an F1. I mean,
Yeah,
that's also why Roy Nassardi's the flipping reserve driver for Williams. Rubbish in Formula 2.
I honestly think they'll bring Jack Aiken in, who did quite decent, but again, it could easily just turn into another Latifi.
Yeah, no, it really could. That kind of wraps up our comparison of each team. Let's go on to final segment, driver of the day. Joe, who have you given driver of the day to?
I'm gonna give it to my favorite driver on this grid, Lando Norris, in terms the fact that I haven't seen McLaren fight up there for, I think it's since 2013. I think it's 2013. It might be 2013 or 2012 when they were like the top two team. So yeah, it's getting to a point where I'm actually believing that McLaren on the right track with the right driver. So I would give it to McLaren being driver of the day because even Ricciardo did very well. So it is, for a McLaren point of view, I'm very, very happy that with this podium for Norris, and that's why he's driving the day. But you can give it to Ricciardo as well easily.
Yeah, that's fair enough. I've also given it to my favourite driver, Sergio Perez. Now I'm joking.
We would have had issues.
Yeah, I don't think I could do that after his nightmarish 200 race in Formula One, but amazing achievement 200 race in Formula One that Latifi and Mazepin will hopefully ever see. But anyway, my driver of the day is a man we've slated on this podcast a lot, but he had a great race. Valtteri Bottas, he's my driver of the day. Came second after starting fifth. Admittedly, he capitalised on Norris getting a penalty and Hamilton getting damage, but it's not his fault. He just did what he had to do. He couldn't get close to Verstappen because Verstappen was in a league of his own, but he had a really good race. And if we're going to slate him, we have to praise him when he does well. And he had a really good race. So he's my driver of the day. And that kind of wraps up our podcast. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Next race is Silverstone in 2 weeks. Which
I'm gonna be at the race.
Joe's going to, and Josh is going to. Guess who isn't going? Me.
Oh wait, Josh. Oh, did you get tickets in the end?
Josh is on. Oh, Josh might be going. Actually, not confirmed. He might be on a staff thing there. So there's a possibility that
he'll be serving my burger.
Yeah, pretty amazing. Yeah, so there's a possibility 2 out of 3 on the podcast will be there, and the one who won't is me, the host. You know, oh well, I'm not mad about it. I've just cried every night for about a week, so it's all right. But yeah, next race Silverstone. Enjoy it, Joe, and Josh. Get well soon. But yeah, thank you for joining me, Joe, when Josh couldn't. Great contributions.
That's fine. Thank you again for having me, even though it's basically meant to be the 3 of us. But yeah, I'm not mad that Josh is not here.
Yeah, I mean, what can you do when you're LBA? Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening. Make sure to like, subscribe, download, whatever you need to do on your platform. And yeah, we'll see you next time. Cheers.